Anti-Xi protest spreads in China and worldwide as Chinese leader begins third term. CNN. Jolie's nerves were running high as she walked into the campus of Goldsmiths at the University of London last Friday morning. She'd planned to arrive early enough that the campus would be deserted, but her fellow students were already beginning to filter in to start their day. In the hallway of the academic building, Jolie, who worn a face mask to obscure her identity, waited for the right moment to reach into her bag for the source of her nervousness. Several pieces of A4 size paper she had printed out in the small hours of the night. Finally, when she made sure none of the students, especially those who, like Jolie, come from China, were watching, she quickly pasted one of them on a notice board. Life not zero COVID policy, freedom not marcher, law-rich lockdown, dignity not lies, reform not cultural revolution, but not dictatorship, citizens not slaves. It reads in English. The day before, these words in Chinese had been handwritten in red paint on the banner hanging over the VG outpass thousands of miles away in Beijing, in a rare, bold protest against China's top leader Xi Jinping. Another banner on the Sitong Bridge denounced Xi as the dictator and the national traitor and called for his removal. Just days before a key Communist Party meeting at which he set to secure a president breaking third term. Both banners were swiftly removed by police, and all mentions of the protest wiped from the Chinese internet. But the short-lived display of political defiance, which is almost unimaginable in Xi's authoritarian surveillance state, has resonated far beyond the Chinese capital, sparking act of solidarity from Chinese national inside China and across the globe. Over the past week, as party elites gathered in Beijing's Great Hall of the People to extol Xi and his policies at the 20th Party Congress, anti-Xi slogans echoing the Sitong Bridge banners have popped up in the growing number of Chinese cities and hundreds of universities worldwide. In China, the slogans were scrawled words and doors in public bathrooms. One of the last places sparse the watchful eyes of the country's ubiquitous surveillance cameras. Overseas, Overseas, many anti-Xi posters were put up by Chinese students like Jolie, who have long learned to keep their critical political views to themselves due to a culture of fear. Under Xi, the party has ramped up surveillance and control of the Chinese diaspora, intimidating and harassing those who dare to speak out and threatening their families back home. Anti-Xi posters are seen on the university campus in the Netherlands. CNN spoke with two Chinese citizens who scribbled protest slogans in bathroom stalls and helped a dozen overseas Chinese students who put up anti-Xi posters on their campuses. As with Jolie, CNN agreed to protect their identities with pseudonyms and anonymity due to the sensitivity of their actions. Many said that they were shocked and moved by the Sitong Bridge demonstration and felt compelled to show support for the long protester who has not been heard of since and is likely face lifelong repercussions. He has come to known as the Bridgeman in a nod to the unidentified tankman who faced down a column of tanks on Beijing's Avenue of Eternal Peace the day after the Tiananmen Square massacre in 1989. Few of them believe their political actions will lead to real changes on the ground, but with Xi emerging Trump, trumpet from the party congress with the potential for lifelong rule, the preparation of anti-Xi slogans are timely reminder that despite his relentless crushing of dissent, the powerful leader may always face undercurrent of resistance. The tiny spark, as China's online censor went into overdrive last week to scrum out all discussions about the Shitong Bridge protest. Some social media users share on all the Chinese saying a tiny spark can set the frailty of laws. It would appear that the fire started from the bridgeman has done just that, setting off an unprecedented show of dissent against Xi's leadership and authoritarian rule among mainland Chinese nationals. The Chinese government policies and actions have sparked outcries online and protests in the street before, but in most cases, their anger has focused on local authorities, and few have attacked Xi himself so directly or bluntly. Critics of Xi have paid a heavy price. 2 years ago, Lan Ji-kwang, a Chinese billionaire who criticized Xi's handling of China's initial COVID-19 outbreak and called the top leader a power-hungry clown, was jailed for 18 years on corruption charges. But the risk of speaking out did not deter Raven Wu, a university senior in eastern China, inspired by the bridge man who left the message in English in the bathroom stall to share his call for freedom, dignity, reform, and democracy. Below the message, he drew a picture of Winnie the Pooh wearing a crown with a no sign drawn over it. She has been compared to the chubby cartoon bear by Chinese social media users. A protest slogan is scribbled on the wall in a public bathroom in China. I felt a long lost sense of liberation when I was scribbling, Wu said. In this country of extreme cultural and political censorship, no political self-expression is allowed. I felt satisfied that for the first time in my life as a Chinese citizen, I did the right thing for the people. There was also the fear of being found out by the school and the consequences, but he managed to push it aside. Wu, whose own political awakening came in high school when he heard about the Tiananmen Square massacre by chance, hoped his scribbles could cause the ripple of change, however small, among those who saw them. He is deeply worried about China's future. Over the past 2 years, despairing news has repeatedly shocked him, he said. Just like Xi's nickname, the accelerator in chief, he is leading the country into the abyss. The most desperate thing is that through the party congress, Xi Jinping will likely establish his status as the emperor and double down on his policies. Chen Kuang, a fresh graduate in southeastern China, shared that the bleak outlook, the economy is faltering, and the censorship is becoming ever more stringent, he said. Chen had tried to share the Xitong Bridge protest on WeChat, China's super app, but it kept getting censored. So he thought to himself, why don't I write the slogans in nearby places to let more people know about him? I found the public restroom and wrote the original Chinese version of the slogan on a toilet stall door as he scrolled on. He was gripped, gripped by the paralyzing fear of being caught by the strict surveillance, but he forced himself to continue. The Beijing protester had sacrificed his life or the freedom of the rest of his life to do what he did. I think we should also be obliged to do something that we can do, he said. Chen described himself as the patriot, patriot, patriot. But I don't love the Communist Party. I have feelings for China, but not the government. Of course, I love my country, but I don't love the Communist Party. So far, the spread of the slogans appears limited. A number of pro-democratic Instagram accounts run by anonymous Chinese nationals have been keeping track of the anti-Xi graffiti and posters. Citizens Daily account with 33,000 followers said it received around 3 dozen reports from mainland China about half of which involved bathrooms. Northern Squares, with 42,000 followers, said it received 8 reports of slogans in bathrooms, which users said were from cities including Beijing, Tianjin, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, and Wuhan. The movement has been dubbed by some as the toilet revolution in the Jibei against Xi's campaign to improve the sanitary conditions at the public restrooms in China, and a nod to the location of much of the anti-Xi messaging. The students in eastern China applauded a town for its ironic effect, but he said it also offers an inspiration, even in a cramped space like the toilet. As long as we have a revolutionary heart, we can make your own. You can make your own contribution, he said. For Chan, the term is a stark reminder of the highly limited space of the free expression in China. Due to the censorship and surveillance, people can only express a political opinion by writing slogans in places like toilets. It is said that we have been oppressed to his extent. Chen said, the glimmer of light. For many overseas Chinese students, including Jolie, it is their first time to have taken political action, driven by a mixture of awe and guilt towards the bridgeman and a sense of duty to show solidarity. Among the posters on the notice board of Goldsmiths, the University of London is one with the photo of the Xitong Bridge protest, which showed the plume of dark smoke blowing up from the bridge. Above it, the Chinese sentence printed in red reads, the courage of the one person should not be without echo. A poster at Goldsmiths, the University of London, reads in Chinese, the courage of one person should not be without echo. Putting out protest posters is the smallest thing, but the biggest I can do now, not because of my ability, but because of my lack of courage, Jolie said, pointing to her relative safety acting outside China's borders. Others expressed a similar sense of guilt. I felt ashamed. If I were in Beijing now, I would never have the courage to do such a thing, said Yu Yvonne Lee, who graduated from Erasmus University Rotterdam in the Netherlands last year. Lee and a friend put up 100 posters on campus and in the city center, including around Chinatown. I really wanted to cry when I first saw the protest on Instagram. I felt politically depressed reading Chinese news every day. I couldn't see any hope, but when I saw this brave man, I realized there is still a glimmer of light, she said. When I saw this brave man, I realized there is still a glimmer of light. The two Instagram accounts, Citizen Daily CN and Northern Square, said they each received more than 1,000 submissions of anti-Xi posters from the Chinese diaspora. According to Citizen Daily CN's tally, the protester posters have been cited at 320 universities across the world. Tang Biao, a human rights lawyer and visiting professor at the University of Chicago, said He's struck by how fast the overseas opposition to Xi has gathered pace and how far it has spread. When she scrapped presidential term limit in 2018, posters featuring the slogan "Not my president" and Xi's face had surfaced in some universities outside China, but the scale paled in comparison, Tang said. In, in the past, there were only sporadic protests by overseas Chinese descent. Voices from university campuses were predominantly supporting the Chinese government and the leadership, he said. The risk. The recent years as she stalked nationalism at home and pursued the assertive foreign policy abroad. An increasing number of overseas Chinese students have stepped forward to defend Beijing from any criticism or perceived slight, sometimes with the blessing of Chinese embassies. They were protested when a university invited the Dalai Lama to be a guest speaker, rebooked for professors per- perceived to have anti China content in their lectures, and clashes when other campus groups expressed support for Hong Kong's pro democracy protest. But as the widespread anti Xi protesters have shown, the rising nationalistic sentiment is by no means representative of all Chinese students overseas. Most often, those who do not agree with the party and its policies simply choose to stay silent. For them, the stakes of openly criticizing Beijing are too high, just too high. The past years, those who spoke out have faced harassment and intimidation, retaliation against the family back home, and lengthy prison terms upon returning to China. Posters calling for Chinese leader Xi Jinping's removal on the university campus in London. Even liberal democracies are influenced by China's long arm of repression. The Chinese government has a large amount of spies and informants monitoring overseas Chinese through various United Front linked organizations, Tang said, referring to a party body responsible for influence and infiltration operations abroad. Tang said Beijing has extended its grip on Chinese students' bodies abroad to police the speech and actions of its nationals overseas, and to make sure the party line is observed even on foreign campuses. The fact that so many students are willing to take the risk shows how widespread the anger is over this decade of moving backward. Most students CNN spoke with said they were worried about being spotted with the posters by Beijing supporters who they fear could expose them on Chinese social media or report them to the embassies. We are scared and kept looking around. I found it absurd at the time and reflected briefly opening. when what we are doing is completely legal here in the Netherlands, but we are still afraid of being seen by other Chinese students since said Lee, the recent graduate in Rotterdam. We are not alone. The fear of being betrayed by fears has weighed heavily on Julie. The students in London, in particular, when growing up in China with views that differed from the party line, I was feeling really lonely, she said. The horrible thing is that your friends and classmates may report you. But as she showed solidarity for the bridge man, she also found solidarity in others who did the same. In the day following the protest in Beijing, Jolie said on Instagram an outpouring of photos showing protest posters from all over the world. I was so moved and also a little bit shocked that I have many friends, although I don't know them, and I felt a very strong emotion, she said. I just thought, my friends, how can I contact you? How can I find you? How can we recognize each other? Anti-she posters at the university in New York. Sometimes all it takes is a knowing smile from the fellow Chinese students, or the new protest poster that crump up on the same notice board to make the students feel reassured. It's important to tell each other that we're not alone, said Chinese students at McGill University in Quebec. After I first hung the posters, I went back to see if they were still there, and I would see another small poster hung by someone else, and I just feel really safe and comforted. I feel like it is my responsibility to do this, as they said. If they didn't do anything, it's just going to be over, and I just don't want it to be over so quickly without any consequences. Not everyone is brainwashed. We are still a nation with ideals and hopes. In China, the party will also be watching closely for any consequences, having tightened its grip on all aspects of life, launched a sweeping crackdown on dissent, wiped out much of civil society, and built a high-tech surveillance state. The party's hold on power appears firmer, firmer than ever, but the extensive censorship around the Shitong Bridge protest also betrayed its paranoia. Maybe the bridge protesters is the only one with such courage and willingness to sacrifice. But there may be millions of other Chinese people who share his views, said Matt, a Chinese student at Columbia University in New York. He let me realize that there are still such people in China, and I want others to know that too. Not everyone is brainwashed. We're still a nation with ideals and hopes. Artist wears the 27 hazmat suit to protest China's policies.